faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Club. Today I'll be discussing the book called Just for Fun. The subtitle is The Autobiography of Linus Torvalds, Father of Linux. Developing an operating system is a massive project that tests teamwork to the extreme. Back in the 1960s, to launch a mainframe computer codenamed System 360 and its operating system, IBM gambled $5 billion, even more than what the US spent developing the atomic bomb during World War II. The familiar Apple Mac and Microsoft Windows systems were also created through massive investments by these Silicon Valley giants. In contrast, Linux is practically a legend in the operating system world. It started with just one developer, Linus Torvalds, requiring only a computer bought on installment and a textbook called Operating Systems, Design and Implementation. Today, Linux is humanity's largest collaborative software project, powering nearly the entire internet infrastructure. Services billions rely on daily, Google searches, online shopping, all run on Linux. Had Linus launched Linux computers like Jobs or charged for it like Gates, he'd likely be world famous and incredibly wealthy by now. And so why didn't he? In this autobiography, Linus gives his answer, just for fun. This book was co-authored by Linus and professional writer David Diamond, with Linus recounting his journey in a self-depreciating style. David documents their interactions from a writer's perspective, giving us a multi-dimensional view of the real Linus through these dual narratives. Now, I'll break down the book's key content into 3 parts. First, what kind of person is Linus? Second, what 3 secrets made Linus succeed with Linux? Third, how does Linus handle wealth and fame? First, let's explore part 1. What kind of person is Linus and the writer? When David first met him, Linus was already the legendary father of Linux, known throughout the industry. But this superhero of the hacker world was nothing like those smooth-talking Silicon Valley elites. No inflated ego, no self-promotion. As David described, Linus wasn't like a reindeer caught in the global spotlight. He was more like a happy alien. This happy alien, born on December 28, 1969, in Finland, his grandfather was a newspaper editor who reportedly published several poetry collections. His father was a TV and radio journalist. His mother worked as a translator at the Finnish news agency, and his sister later ran a news translation agency. His half-brother became a photographer.
Yet in this family environment, Linus became a science-loving nerd.
He loved math, loved physics, loved figuring out how things worked, but his social skills were terrible. Girls often asked him for math help, and Linus's dad always suspected their interest wasn't purely academic.
Linus never grasped his father's implication. To him, tutoring girls was like caring for
The neighbor's 15-pound cat, nothing to overthink. Around age 11, Linus encountered his first real computer, bought by his grandfather, a university statistics professor, as an advanced calculator. To spark Linus's math interest, his grandfather often showed him programs handwritten on paper. Linus studied these paper programs, learned to simplify formulas, and helped input the numbers correctly. Later, Linus read computer manuals and wrote his first program, making hello repeat endlessly. The computer printed hello line after line, a common beginner's project that's often their last, since what's the point of printing it a million times? Such programs seemed useless and silly back then, but Linus didn't stop there. He modified the program, changing hello to my sister is the best. Watching screen after screen of my sister is the best, Linus's sister was deeply moved, and she too fell hopelessly in love with computers. He persuaded his grandfather to buy his first computer book. The text was all in English, though his native language was Swedish. It started Linus found reading challenging. He used saved pocket money to buy computer magazines, took computers apart to see inside and how each component worked. The computer became Linus's intimate life partner. His whole world revolved around this ordinary yet magical machine. If something puzzled him, Linus would obsess over it without eating or sleeping, never giving up on solutions. He'd zone out, deaf to others, ignoring questions. If anyone interrupted his computer time, Linus would get really angry. During an interview with David, Linus admitted he couldn't recall details about his parents' divorce or his high school graduation ceremony, but ask about the Motorola 68008 chip's specs, or how he schemed to get a computer, and he'd recount everything. Linus could explain every tiny detail, clearly. With this dedication, when he created Linux at 22, he'd already been immersed in computers for over a decade. But Linus's mother believed he had no special computer talent. What drove him wasn't tech, fame, or fortune, but honest curiosity, a drive to conquer challenges, and a knack for solving problems. Now, let's move to part 2. What were the 3 secrets to Linus's success with Linux? First, Linus seized the opportunity when leading OSs like Unix and BSD were stuck in endless lawsuits. The stagnation of these rivals gave Linux a chance to grow and mature. It's a long story. Let's start with the basics. What's an operating system? An operating system is basically a program, but unlike user programs on your desktop waiting to run, the OS is the big boss controlling everything. It's the first commander in place when you boot up. All hardware and software, CPU, memory, storage, I/O devices, or user apps, must follow the OS's orders. For instance, whether you're opening a web page, playing music, or accessing files, all actions need the OS's okay. For a programmer, if they truly want to understand how computers work, they must study operating systems. And for a top-tier programmer, creating an operating system is the ultimate challenge. In the early 1960s, before Linus was born, operating systems were relatively primitive. Multi-programming batch systems ensured CPU and I/O devices worked simultaneously without idle hardware. Time-sharing systems guaranteed fair CPU time for queued programs. Under these constraints, Bell Labs programmers Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson urgently wanted to improve their programming environment. Their ideal environment featured real-time interaction. Users input commands, computers respond instantly. To achieve this, they needed to develop a new operating system as programming masters. Thompson found a PDP-7 mini computer. This unused machine had no software, let alone an OS development environment. Thompson and Ritchie started from data storage fundamentals, ultimately creating Unix's first version. After 8 years of refinement, Unix not only fulfilled their vision, but ran across computer models. With its elegant design and power, Unix became an OS superstar. Bell Labs' parent company AT&T, restricted by antitrust laws, couldn't pursue computer sales R&D. So they paid little attention to commercializing Unix. But universities like UC Berkeley grew interested, bundling Unix version 6 with software to create a derivative system. The Berkeley Software Distribution, BSD. As BSD spread freely online, it fragmented into variants like Portable NetBSD and Secure OpenBSD, all gaining attention among Unix users. AT&T finally recognized Unix's importance, releasing its latest version in 1983 that required payment, prohibited source code sharing, and barred modifications. In 1984, under antitrust laws, AT&T was split into 8 companies. After being permitted into computing, they sued a company selling paid BSD versions. This subsequently dragged UC Berkeley into the legal battle. The seemingly endless lawsuit forced all BSD development to halt. BSD users grew anxious about AT&T's pursuit, causing leading OS projects to stall, objectively creating a golden era for next-gen innovators. But this opportunity was available to everyone. Why did Linus seize it? That brings us to the second secret behind Linus's Linux success. He treated challenges as fun and had extraordinary drive. During Linus's sophomore year, his university offered a course called C Language and Unix. Before classes started, he'd already finished the 719-page textbook, Operating Systems, Design and Implementation. This textbook completely captivated Linus's fascination with operating systems. Its author was Andrew Tannenbaum. The book introduced Minix, a OS derived from Unix but using no official code. Tannenbaum never intended it to replace Unix. He positioned Minix as teaching software to help students learn Unix. Thus, Minix lacked Unix's extensive features and didn't anticipate students wanting broader applications. Through Minix, Linus grasped Unix's power and swiftly mastered its essence: simplicity. Unix embraced small is beautiful. Each program handled one function perfectly, but chained together, they tackled complex tasks. For example, we constantly call on the OS, asking it to handle diverse tasks. In technical terms, this is called a system call. An OS might have countless system calls, but Unix has 6 basic ones like open, close, read, and write. These 6 fundamental calls are enough to handle most user tasks. After appreciating Unix's elegance, Linus desperately wanted to use it, but the only affordable version was Minix, a scaled-down Unix variant. He paid for Minix, waited over a month, and finally received it on 16 floppy disks labeled Linux. But Linus soon found Minix limiting. Like when dialing into school computers via phone line, Minix struggled terribly. Linus decided to write his own program to make it work. This challenge drove him to self-study. How does a CPU actually work? How does it read keyboard input? How to test software reliability? In about a month, Linus conquered this. Now he could lounge at home, comfortably accessing school computers and browsing news, until new problems arose. Linus wanted more, not just reading news or emails, but downloading and uploading files. That meant writing a disk driver to manage storage hardware, plus a philsexworld driver to save downloads properly for later retrieval. It sounded simple but meant endless work and headaches. Linus chose to push forward. His life narrowed to 3 things: coding, eating biscuits, and quick showers. Coding consumed nearly all his time. As his project grew, Linus realized it was evolving into a full OS. He shifted perspective, aiming to replace Minix, and sought online help. He needed to know, what functions must an OS have? How many system calls to implement? Finally, Linus found a Unix manual, and enthusiastic netizens mailed him thick reference materials. These references explained system call functions, steps, and outcomes, but omitted the crucial implementation methods. Undeterred, Linus extracted each system call from the references and wrote programs for every one. On September 17, 1991, Linus released Linux's first version, 0.1, online for free use and download, appearing like a victory dawn. Well, the initial Linux 0.01 wasn't very useful. For example, storing too much data or minor mistakes would crash Linux immediately. Even with careful use, extended runtime would still cause crashes. As Linus put it, early Linux ran like a somewhat crippled Unix. So how did this crippled OS skyrocket to stardom?
This brings us to the third secret: an open source philosophy. Initially, few downloaded Linux, but feedback was universally positive.
One user emailed Linus enthusiastically praising Linux's potential, then noted its fragile disk driver erased all his files, yet he still supported Linus's OS. Linus valued user feedback and began fixing small operational issues. By early October, he released version 0.02. By November, version 0.03. By then, most fundamental OS challenges were solved. Linus later admitted he might have quit by end 1991 to seek new challenges. Except 2 things happened. First, a coding mistake made his modified Linux unusable. Linus could have reloaded Minix, modified Linux like before, booting it via Minix, but Linux was now good enough. He decided to ditch Minix and boot or compile programs directly through Linux. This critical step meant Linux became self-hosting, no longer dependent on Minix, a truly standalone system. Second event, December 1991. A German user emailed Linus for help. His computer had too little memory to run programming tools or compilers needing over 1 megabyte RAM. The user asked for solutions. Linus had a high-end machine himself, but chose to help anyway. So Linus created a new feature Linux lacked: paging to disk. With this, low-memory machines could run big programs. This feature Linus didn't need solved many users' headaches, and Linux's user base grew daily. Linux evolved from a hobby project to an essential part of people's lives. At this point, Linus could have charged users. In fact, many already emailed asking if they could send him $30 or so. For cash-strapped student Linus, this would have been a godsend. He had $5,000 in student loans and $50 per month computer payments, and his mother struggled financially, working daily to support two kids' education. Linus could have justifiably accepted payments.
But compared to money, Linus preferred postcards from users worldwide and feedback to improve Linux.
Beyond that, Linus believed he'd built Linux by standing on giants' shoulders, benefiting from predecessors' work. He wanted to share his work so others could stand on his shoulders and create better tech. For this reason, Linus didn't charge anyone. He established 3 rules about Linux. First, people can use the operating system for free, but it cannot be sold as a product. Second, any changes and improvements to Linux must be made public in source code form. Third, if you don't agree to these rules, you have no right to use Linux. Under these rules, Linus could quickly learn about others' changes and add the good ones to his version. Hackers worldwide joined in, turning Linux into the planet's largest collaborative project. With Linux's unstoppable growth, more companies and individuals recognized its commercial value. Some emailed Linus, hoping to collaborate with him. Some downloaded Linux onto floppy disks and asked Linus if they could sell it that way. Similar incidents. Linus eventually realized that more people and companies, as long as they respected Linux as open source software and followed its specific commercial rules, could use the source code to develop new products or services. Later, Linus signed the GNU General Public License and added this new copyright notice to Linux 0.12. This move drew more businesses into Linux's commercial ecosystem, propelling Linux and open source to new heights.
Today, Linux is everywhere, in supermarkets, anti-lock brakes or watches, and critical places like the US Fermi Lab or NASA. If you see an Android phone, that's seeing Linux too, since Android is Google's OS built on Linux.
All this is thanks to Linus and what drove him to achieve it. It's all because of his traits: seeing challenges as fun, persisting until success, and his open technical philosophy. Next, we'll cover the book's third part, how Linus faced wealth and fame. Before answering this question, let's see if Linux's success brought Linus a lot of money. Of course not in the early days. The installment loan for Linus's computer was paid off by his friends who started an online fundraiser. But as Linux's influence grew, many tech companies extended olive branches to Linus. An entrepreneur in London offered a $10 million deal for Linus to serve as a director. Apple's Steve Jobs also urgently wanted to meet him, as mentioned in the email to Linus. Jobs wrote, "After stepping into this galaxy, my first task is to meet those shining stars." In the subsequent meeting, Jobs told Apple's story, Apple's goals, and he invited Linus and his top hackers to dominate the desktop OS market together. Linus declined Jobs' invitation. On one hand, he wanted to remain impartial towards all Linux collaborators. He didn't want to compromise Linux's independence and openness by partnering with Apple. On the other hand, Linus felt Apple's OS was just a pile of clunky junk. He wasn't interested in Apple's story, nor was his goal to conquer any market. Although his Linux had achieved it, Linus's refusal was genuine, but when he truly became wealthy, his excitement was also real. In 1999, 2 Linux partners, Red Hat and VA Linux, went public successively. Linus became a multimillionaire by owning their stocks and options. He was ecstatic, tracking Red Hat's stock price and even waking up worried if VA Linux's shares dropped. Next, the second question. Did Linux's success bring fame to Linus? The answer is yes. In 2004, he was named one of the world's most influential people by Time magazine. To attract more people to learn and join the open source movement, Linus, who considered himself socially inept, launched a global promotional campaign. Through Linux's success and Linus's repeated speeches, more people realized that controlling technology in an authoritarian, monopolistic, stingy way hinders its adoption and ultimately harms the company. Through open source, letting technology flow freely so anyone can improve and use it is truly the best way to advance technological progress. As for all those commercial possibilities people expect, market success, and rolling in wealth, those are just a matter of time. But Linus's fame also brought him some troubles. In 1996, Linus decided to immigrate to the US with his wife and daughter to join a commercial company called Transmeta. The Linux community protested constantly, viewing it as a carefully orchestrated international conspiracy to control Linux, and some open source zealots began complaining about the movement's most famous figure. Well, the founder of Linux, Linus, was actually working for a Silicon Valley commercial company that hadn't contributed any products to open source. Similar complaints and accusations piled up. Linus believed being famous certainly had downsides. You face protests, complaints, misunderstandings, and sky-high expectations. But fame was also fun and interesting. You gain unique life experiences. In 2003, Linus left the company he'd worked at for 7 years to focus on Linux and open source development. Though he and his family lived comfortably, he kept emphasizing his life philosophy in this book. You can strive for your career, yet ultimately, life's goal is happiness, just for fun. That wraps up today's interpretation. Find reading notes below the audio. See you next time.